Now, we are at a stage where we know that how photosynthesis takes place, what would be the raw material required for photosynthesis, what are the various possibilities according to which the photosynthesis can take place depending upon the morphological aspects as well. And now what we have to take into consideration is the law of limiting factors. Now, what is there in law of limiting factors? There must be a generalization given by some studious person who must have studied photosynthesis in detail, and here we come across a word known as factors, as you can see over here. So the factors which influence the photosynthesis, we are going to deal with that, and there would be something which would be limiting. We'll come to this aspect that deals with the limiting factors in the rate of photosynthesis. Please remember, here we have to deal with the rate of photosynthesis, that how much photosynthesis is taking place in the given time, whether the photosynthesis is taking place at a fast rate or it is at a slow pace. So we have to see that. Okay, in terms of that we will come to the law of limiting factors. Before we reach there, we have one simple generalization. You are aware of the name Julius von Sachs, the great botanist who have studied in great details about the plant life, and he was the one who gave hydroponics, and the entire knowledge of mineral nutrition was given by him. He gave us a cardinal point theory. He gave us this cardinal point theory which was important in understanding photosynthesis rates aspect. The rate of photosynthesis aspect could be studied from the cardinal point aspects of, or the generalizations which were given by Julius von Sachs in 1860. So what was observed by him was that supposedly we are dealing with the rate of photosynthesis and we are dealing with a particular factor. Now when I say factor over here, it refers to the input aspect, okay, some sort of input which would be responsible for evolving oxygen and the formation of glucose. So we deal with certain factors of photosynthesis, and what he observed was that supposedly we are representing the factors, the value of factors, that means their quantity. It could be anything, it could be quantity, it could be its intensity. So the value of factors, remember we are talking about value of factor, and the rate of photosynthesis. The relation between it when studied came out to be like this. Okay, the value of factors which were influencing photosynthesis and the rate of photosynthesis, when they were projected, the relationship was projected, it gave this shape graphically. Now this point represents the, let me put it as number 1, this point is number 2, and this point over here is number 3. Now point 1, the value of factors, concentration or intensity, you can take it whatever value. The value of factor where the rate of photosynthesis is minimum happens to be 1, and that value is minimum value. You can make it out very easily. This point where again it comes like this, this is also minimum value. And this one is optimum. Okay, pardon me, it is the maximum value. We are dealing with the value of the factor. So the first one is the minimum value of the factor where the rate of photosynthesis is almost nil. The maximum value of the factor, though it is increased, then also the rate of photosynthesis is almost nil, as you can see over here. Then there is a value known as optimum value, which is that value of the factor. If that value is given infinitely, then this process of rate of photosynthesis would continue and it will stay at this pace only. It is, I would repeat it, it is that value of the factor, whichever we are considering. We are going to deal with the various factors in an independent lesson. The factor that we are considering value of that factor, that much value, if it is given to the plant, the rate of photosynthesis and the performance of photosynthesis, it would continue infinitely. That is the value known as optimum value. Now, if you provide this much value of the factor to the plant, it is bound, it is expected, not bound, it is expected that the photosynthesis would continue non-stop, infinitely, and that is known as optimum value. Now, why I am telling you all this, you haven't heard about limiting factors by now, because this optimum value as expected from Sachs' point of view, it does not show the same effect in the rate of photosynthesis. Firstly, because we are considering a single factor over here. When the photosynthesis takes place, as you know, it is a biological process and nothing happens in vacuum in a biological process. All the things are going hand in hand. So not only one factor would be responsible for governing the rate of photosynthesis, there would be many factors which would be governing the rate of photosynthesis. Now this considers a single factor, and for single factor, this cardinal graph that we have, cardinal point, it would be similar. Okay, supposedly I am taking the factor, we have carbon dioxide as the raw material, it will have same projection that there would be a minimum value, there would be a maximum value, and there would be an optimum value which would correspond to the rate of photosynthesis accordingly. Now moving further, coming to the law of limiting factors, I hope this part is clear. Now we have to talk about the rate of photosynthesis and what does this law say about. What is it about the limiting factor? Now, from your knowledge of chemistry, you might have heard it that there is a rate determining step, the constituent of a reaction which is available in least quantity determines the course of reaction or the speed of reaction. That is part of chemical kinetics, I guess, in chemistry. Now, in the case of law of limiting factors, we have a similar injunction that the limiting factors, there would not be number of limiting factors, but there would be one limiting factor which would be determining the rate of photosynthesis. Now, because we are dealing with rate of photosynthesis, supposedly, before coming to this, just remember, like Julius von Sachs gave the cardinal point theory. We have Blackman who gave this law of limiting factors in 1905. He was the one responsible for studying the rate of photosynthesis and the effect of that limiting factor which ultimately guides the rate of photosynthesis. Now what he took was, he took a plant and firstly he kept the plant in no illumination, zero light you can say. Okay, now because there was no light, the photosynthesis was not taking place, though the carbon dioxide was provided in 0.01% quantity, and because there was no light, carbon dioxide was there, oxygen was there, the photosynthesis was not taking place. As soon as the intensity of light was increased, he observed that the rate of photosynthesis had increased. Later on, he kept on increasing the light intensity to a certain value, it kept on increasing. I would show you in this way, like supposedly we have the rate of photosynthesis like this. As soon as the plant got illuminated, the photosynthesis rate became like this. Like it increased in the beginning and then it stopped. Okay. The light intensity was there, it was as much as light could be used, that was being used, the plant was performing the photosynthesis, but after some time it stopped. Okay, and later on what he did is, he increased the light intensity and kept the carbon dioxide concentration at the same value, which led to this, such presentation of the rate of photosynthesis. Now he kept on increasing the light intensity gradually, but the photosynthesis rate did not increase. Later on he increased the rate of the quantity of carbon dioxide, that is concentration of carbon dioxide, and the graph became like this. Now after this he kept on increasing the carbon dioxide concentration, but the rate of photosynthesis did not increase, because that optimum value had come, and the content of the photosynthesis, that content which is responsible for limiting the rate of photosynthesis, is the one which is available in the least quantity. Okay, I'm going to repeat it again. Here we have this is the rate Okay, and this is the factor. This is what we are talking about. Now, what we have discussed over here, that the rate of photosynthesis would be determined by that particular factor which would be available in the limiting quantity. That means the rate of the entire reaction that is taking place, it would depend on the value of that factor which is present in the minimum quantity. Like if you are expecting that you have given lot much intensity of light to the plant, but you are not providing enough carbon dioxide, that is limiting. So the photosynthetic rate would depend on that concentration of carbon dioxide which you have provided. If it is less, the rate of photosynthesis would be according to that lesser concentration. If it is higher, then rate of photosynthesis would be according to that concentration. Now when carbon dioxide would come in abundance, some other factor would become limiting. So we have the law of limiting factor which states that some or other input for the photosynthesis process would be limiting, and who would be what would be limiting? That particular value or that particular factor which has the least value. That would determine the rate of photosynthesis, which is quite similar to your understanding from chemical kinetics, where you have an idea that whichever reactant is present in the minimum value, it decides the rate of reaction. Similarly, the various factors which are responsible for carrying out the photosynthesis, the rate of photosynthesis would depend on the value of that particular factor which would be present in the least quantity. So in that way, that factor would be limiting factor, and this is what law of limiting factor is all about. Here we have the idea that the optimum value, the cardinal point of optimum value, has a role to play, but it is of no use if the factor is not limiting. It can provide the rate of photosynthesis, whatever is expected from it, but the moment something else becomes limiting, then the role of that cardinal value is almost null, because the rate would be determined by that limiting factor itself. So this is all about the law of limiting factors. The next lesson would be about the factors. Which are those factors which could behave as the limiting ones? So we deal with the factors which affect the photosynthesis.